So I want to show you why it is that Trump is trying to tell you without telling you. And what is he trying to tell you? What is Melania trying to tell you? That this war goes back to mobsters. It goes back to your vintage days, because that's especially the women, the day that Trump was sworn in. But Tiffany, Melania, and Ivanka all looked like they were wearing vintage. Definitely Melania. I mean, many people. She looks badass gangster. And then a few days ago, Trump put this out. He just posted it. Okay, gangster. Now, I'm not saying he is, but he's trying to tell you that's what you're dealing with. This was a very telling picture to me, these two, because this looks old. I mean, they look great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say they don't look good. It's vintage. It's vintage, and it's vintage for a reason. I mean, look at Ivanka's belt. Look at the hat. It's vintage, and it's meant to be. It's meant to send a message to look like, this is what they wore back in the day. And when the mobsters were most active, I guess you could say, in Prohibition, but then they continued to be in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But their biggest, was during Prohibition, during the 20s, 30s, but it just continued on. Here's Tiffany. She's in velvet blue. And again, she's pregnant, but she looks beautiful, but do you see it's vintage? And vintage is great, don't get me, but it very much was sending a message. Even Lara Trump. But not so much her. It was more Ivanka, Tiffany, and Melania. And see, Tiffany's pregnant. But you see, it's the buttons, it's the belt, it's... And for sure, Ivanka, I mean, as soon as I saw the hat, and not that they don't still wear that kind of hat, it's just I don't think people would pick up on it. When her and Melania were next to each other, it was like, oh boy, this is really trying to tell people something. That was my opinion. And then here's, Melania's dress. Yeah, it's all the vintage stuff. Again, it's beautiful. It's just, especially Melania. And look at the see Trump, it's like he's smiling, like he just knows. Some people are going to get it. See, these two the most look. They look like, back in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. So if you wanted to send a message that what you're dealing with is a mob situation, well, this would be the way to do it, because it just would. Definitely Melania was sending a message. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That mobsters have been controlling your country. And these were your vintage, era. Which also just happens to correspond with when the mafia was very active. This reminded me for sure of Tiffany's. I mean, obviously it's not exactly the same, and she wasn't wearing a hat or anything, but Ivanka was. But this is velvet. It just reminded me. All three of those women were really trying to. They didn't just pick those things for. And again, I'm not saying they didn't look good. I don't think any of those women could put something on and not look good. They would all look good. Don't get me wrong. It's just for all three of them to be wearing the same era, same vintage era. This is going even further back to like the 20s, so 20s or 30s. This screamed mobster to me. Not that Trump is, but again, telling you without telling you that, yeah, the mobs have been controlling, organized crime has been controlling America. That's obvious. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, because the mob did seem to just kind of disappear off the street, and they didn't just disappear. They just went into higher roles in our government. And this is just another picture of Tiffany's, what she was wearing. And I mean, again, look, it's just wearing the velvet. Not the velvet, they all look good. It's just, it all was very telling, in my opinion. So then when you had Donald Trump put this out a few days ago, and you had Melania and the other girls wearing what they were wearing on the day he was sworn in, it should be obvious what he's saying. And he's not saying he's the mobster. Although, what has the media loved to say the last 8 years about him? Oh, that he's connected to the mob. Again, he could not, no builder in New York, any mafia person that's, because there's been some that come out and they talk, I forget the one guy's name that I see often, but there's a few of them. They made the rounds in the past 8 years. And they've all said, no, there was no builder in New York. None. And the politicians set it up this way. That's what they'll tell you. The politicians set it up that way. Every builder had to go through them if they wanted to build. So Trump did have interactions with them, but he was never tied to anything dirty. And then going back to RFK Jr. for a minute. Look, RFK Jr. went fossil hunting with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Jeffrey Epstein stayed in the car, but Ghislaine went fossil hunting. Well, that was when he was with his second wife, okay? He had a couple of interactions with him, and he says that it was before he... But still, like none of the Kennedys ever were telling you about Epstein, right? And they're a powerful family. It was Trump that was doing something about Epstein. Again, because when did Epstein finally... I mean, they nabbed him for... being with underage girls in Florida, but he was on some work release program. He was barely serving time, okay? He got such a light sentence. But he did have, a label of, child molester, basically. So that was what, in the late or the early 2000s, something like that. But Trump's the only one that was following up on it. Is anybody doing anything about Epstein? And yet what they try to do is say, well, Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago's a public place. Trump threw him out of Mar-a-Lago. And the lawyer that was trying to go after Epstein said that Trump was the only one that would get in contact with them and say, why is this guy still on the street? Why isn't something being done? Again, Cindy McCain herself, John McCain's wife, said everybody knew. Everybody knew about Epstein. Nobody would do anything. Why? Because he was protected by organized crime. He was an organized crime of the FBI, organized crime of the CIA. So nobody was going to do anything. But it does make you wonder, why didn't any of the Kennedys ever say anything? No, they all panicked when he ran. They definitely all panicked when Jeffrey Epstein came off the street, and he came off the street when Trump went into office. Trump's, second year? Was it 2017 or 18? I think it was 17 or 18. I'm not, one of the two. He did something about it. So when the media has done nothing but attack this man and this family, they've been the ones trying to do something. So that's how stupid these liberals, which I think many of these people that are on TikTok that like to say Trump this, Trump that, I think they're really just stupid, or they're criminally minded themselves. I tend to think, and I felt this way for the past year, especially if they're men, that they're likely pedophiles. And they know he's trying to do something about the pedophile problem, the trafficking problem. The Kennedys, they're tied to organized crime. They know all about this trafficking, never said a thing, but they're put on this pedestal. RFK Jr. ran for one reason. I mean, I guarantee this, all of these people, many of these people, I say Musk and RFK Jr., they only got on board with Trump after the assassination attempt failed. The assassination attempt wasn't supposed to fail. They've done this many times. I mean, mobsters. I'm not saying they were the ones doing it. But the people that have tried to attempt to take Trump's life, they're organized crime. It'll come out.